What's going on, guys? JS Pyro here, and welcome back to Warframe. And today, we're going to be taking a look at everyone's favorite pacifist airbending monk, Baruuk. Baruuk is one of my all-time favorite Warframes in the game, and definitely many people's favorites, and one that you should definitely pick up if you like annihilating massive hallways full of enemies with massive amounts of red crits and punching airbending action. Just a really fun frame to pick up and play. The way Baruuk works is that you use his abilities to reduce Baruuk's restraint meter down at the bottom right, that big circular icon, so that you can use his fourth ability and do big amounts of damage as displayed really quickly here. So yeah, definitely really fun. But of course, we'll get into all that, so let's go ahead and take a look really quickly at Baruuk's abilities. And first up, we have Elude, Baruuk's first ability, in which basically you activate it, and basically in a certain area in front around you, you basically avoid incoming damage from enemy attacks. The downside to Elude, and why most people tend to just not use it, is that one, it has an enemy drain, but number two, and more importantly, you can't attack anything while using it. Basically, you pop this, you can't do anything at all. Otherwise, it stops working. And also, I think it also doesn't, like, blocks enemies AoE splash damage, so you're still prone to certain other effects. But basically, outside of that, also you have to build it for a massive amount of range in order to block enemy damage from all around you. I think like 200% ability range, if I remember correctly, or something like that. But yeah, basically it just gets in the way a bit, and this is the one that you basically want to helm over for Baruuk. But more importantly now, we have Lol, Baruuk's second ability, and arguably his most important ability when it comes to preparing for his big damage, as this ability puts enemies to sleep, and for every ability, every enemy you put to sleep, you erode Baruuk's meter. Now, ironically, even though this is pretty good for crowd control, putting enemies to sleep makes them so they can't attack you, we're honestly not going to be using it for that, as generally we're going to be going for a very low duration build on Baruuk in order to be able to recast this ability, because enemies that are already asleep cannot be re-sleeped until they wake up. And in order to drain Baruuk's restraint meter quite a lot, we want to basically make sure that they wake up as quick as possible so we can put them back to sleep and thus erode more of Baruuk's restraint meter. And we'll get into the restraint meter in a minute. So generally, we're going to be running pretty much negative duration build on Baruuk to make this thing very useful. But again, you could probably use it to put enemies to sleep and crowd control, but you honestly won't need to because of Baruuk's next ability, which is called Desolate Hands. Basically, Baruuk summons a bunch of daggers that float around him and seek out enemy targets, doing a little bit of damage, but also destroying their primary weapon, meaning that if they have a gun in their hand, that gun's bye-bye, and all they have left is a melee, which enemies not being able to shoot at you is quite a big deal. But obviously it takes a while to do that. So alongside it destroying little by little enemy weapons, it also provides damage reduction, which basically means that if enemies do shoot at you, you're not going to be taking a lot of damage at all. And we can honestly mod this thing with a lot of power strength to get it up to 90% damage reduction, which is really good. It means that basically it's going to be very hard to kill you. So alongside putting enemies to sleep over and over and having this ability active, destroying enemy weapons and basically preventing you from taking a lot of damage if they, shoot at you, you're basically very hard to kill. But more importantly, every enemy, when these darts attack enemy weapons, they also, since you got enemies, they also drain Baruuk's restraint meter, which paired with Lol helps to really drain it a lot very quickly. So modding for Lol and Desolate Hands with negative duration and a decent amount of range with a lot of strength will help basically drain that restraint meter very fast, which is very useful because we have Baruuk's fourth ability, Serene Storm, which basically requires the restraint meter to be drained in order to use. We'll go into the restraint meter here in a second. But basically, this is the Baruuk's key ability and why everyone loves this guy and why he's called the Airbender in the first place. The red crit monster, if you will. Basically, Baruuk pulls out these exalted kind of fist weapons that basically punch and send out a big burst of energy air into the in towards enemies, basically staggering them and causing damage. And with the way we're going to be building Baruuk, that ability is going to annihilate all the enemies that are in your way. So basically using this to stay alive and sleep enemies and drain this restraint meter, and then using this to kill everything in front of you that dares to ever cross your path. That's basically how Baruuk works. We'll go ahead and talk about his passive real quick, and we'll go more in depth into his abilities. With each projectile dodge, each enemy lulled or disarmed erodes Baruuk's restraint meter and feels his storm within. As Baruuk's restraint is diminished, he becomes up to 50% more resistant to damage. So basically, already another means of protection by just not while you're not in Saren's Storm. And I do believe while you're in Saren's Storm, you also do get a bit of damage reduction as well at the bottom there. So basically, you get damage reduction from eroding his meter, damage reduction from using Desolate Hands, and damage reduction from being in his fourth. So generally speaking, that's pretty good. Makes it very hard to kill Baruuk. So again, very, very tanky. So yeah, basically that's Baruuk's ability. So let's go ahead and get into the build. Alright, to get into the build for Baruuk Prime, before we get started, I want to quickly mention that I have not had a chance. I just built this guy, so I have not had a chance to form with this guy, but I will be going over what you probably should do in the event that you do yourself forma him, which you're going to want to put a lot of forma into this guy, because it's going to be a lot of fun to use him. So go ahead and click on to A. This is the current build. So we're going to be using Umbral Intensify for ability strength, along with Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude to pump up that to strength beyond 250, and if in some cases with certain mods, maybe into even the 300%. Of course, using Blind Rage does affect ability efficiency in a negative, and that's not very good. So we'll be employing Fleeting Expertise to counteract that ability efficiency drop. But bonus also is that the Fleeting Expertise and Transient Fortitude have caused negative duration, which is, like I said, we're going to want that negative duration in order to cast Lull as much as possible, as fast as possible, in order to basically get that restraint meter down. But we're also going to be using Rolling Guard for survivability, Natural Talent for the casting speed, because Baruuk's abilities kind of tend to be a little bit on the slow side. But if you honestly don't mind that, you could honestly replace this with Augur Reach for more range, or Augur Secrets for more ability strength, if it will please you, of course. But I'm going to be using Natural Talent because I prefer it that way. For the Augur mod, we're going to be using Corrosive Projection in a non-Forma build, but for a Forma build, I highly recommend using Brief Respite in order for shield gating tactics, or you could use maybe Growing Power for extra ability strength. Melee Guidance also works in this slot. Steel Charge, increased melee damage. So honestly, I would recommend these over Corrosive Projection any day. Of course, for the auxiliary slot, you're going to be wanting to use Prime Sure-Footed or Handspring Prime Sure-Footed, because getting knocked down is a good way to die in high-end content, and of course, the less time you spend on your ass is more damage that you are doing to the enemy. So yeah, definitely get yourself one of these. Again, don't have it, you can use regular Sure-Footed if you have it, or you can use, better yet, Handspring, which is a lot of alternatives that people like to use. Basically, that is going to be the build. For the arcanes, definitely have Arcane Strike, 100% Arcane Strike, really good for Baruuk, as well as Arcane Energize if you're worried about energy consumption, which honestly is a little iffy depending on your skill level. So if you're not using Arcane Energize, you can use maybe like, I think, Molt Augmented or Molt Efficiency, one of those two, I think. in place of this in order to help with Baruuk's overall use. But that is the build. For the Helminth ability, Pillage is really good, but I've also seen people use Pharaoh Strike. I use Pillage because it gives Baruuk shields, so it helps, again, avoid dying from shield gating issues. So you just cast this, got shields back, good to go. But again, if you're using Brief Respite or an Augur mod, generally you could probably replace this with Pharaoh Strike and get, like, I think a possible 100% damage armor strip for that. But I heard some issues with that. If you're not into armor stripping, you could use Mag's Pull to pull in enemies to clump them together so that you can go ham on them with the fists, bopping, you know. So that also will work right here. I'm going to be doing a lot of formatting myself and get this thing set up the way I prefer it, but that's what I would highly recommend for you on the Baruuk build. For the Desert Wind build, you honestly could build this a few different ways, but honestly you'll definitely want something like Prime Pressure Point, Sacrificial Steel, Organ Shatter, and then maybe like an Element mod or two. Maybe you can throw on some, you definitely want Berserker Fury or Prime Fury. And Quickening I use because of Baruuk's Desert Wind, aka his Exalted ability, does actually benefit from combos. So we're going to be getting into that here in a moment. But another thing I want to count is Corrupt Charge. Now, if you are not using the Naramon School, if you're not planning, like, honestly, you don't need to build combo for Baruuk to do Oonga Boonga damage. You can, but it's not necessary. But for those who want to see those massive amounts of red crits, you're going to want to do a stat stick. You're going to want to build for combo. And unfortunately, there's a little weird issue with stat sticks on Baruuk's Desert Wind where the combo just stops working completely. But to counter this, I find Corrupt Charge works pretty well. Although I think it still needs to be, it still has some issues in that regard. Regardless, if you're planning on doing stat stick, combo building, throw a Corrupt Charge on here, that will help a lot. Again, Quickening cannot highly recommend. And for the stat stick, we'll be using the Venka Prime for the ×13 combo multiplier, as well as this build here. Make sure you have all of these Gladiator mods on, as they definitely help with combo, attack speed, and critical damage. So they're really useful together. Make sure you are using these. I primed Furries here because I'm actually not sure. I know you can't use Berserker Fury and Prime Fury together, but question for someone in the comments: if I use Berserker Fury on my Exalted weapon and Prime Fury on my stat stick, do they stack? That's something I actually want to test out. Primed Reach for, of course, range. Recoil for heavy attack efficiency, but you could replace that with... where are you? And there it is. Relentless Combination if you're not planning on doing heavy attacks. A body count for combo duration, and Drifting Contact for initial combo. So yeah, basically this is a stat stick that I'm currently using. Again, you can build this variety of ways, but this one will definitely work as well. But yeah, that's pretty much the build. If you are going to go for that combo, building combo, definitely switch to the Naramon School and use its base ability, which basically prevents combo depletion. Basically, if you build combo, stop attacking, the combo just disappears and you have to rebuild it. This prevents that from doing that, and so it basically makes it so it only decays over a little over time, which basically keeps you in the red crits a lot longer. If you are going to be using the combo building method, highly recommend having some sort of weapon or gun that can one-shot in the Acolytes, because Violence, Baruuk can easily take down an Acolyte on his own, but of course you end up with Violence, and Violence will just nullify all your abilities and make you just a walking paper lantern. So you want something to easily take down Violence quickly so you can get back into the groove. But yeah, that's basically what we'll be running. So that goes over the build. Now let's talk about how to play Baruuk. Alright, so basically to play Baruuk, as I said, you need to drain his Restraint Meter. The Restraint Meter is located at the bottom right hand of the screen. That white circular bar indicates his Restraint. As you can see, it is currently full, and if I try to activate his 4th ability, you can't do it. No Oonga Boonga damage yet. So in order to deplete the restraint meter, we're going to cast Lull. This is why I said to have negative duration on Lull, because as you can see, they fall asleep, and as you can see, they wake back up pretty quickly, allowing you to, again, cast it and re-sleep. As you can see, the bar slowly trains. If I try to recast it now, as you can see, it does nothing to the bar. You cannot re-sleep enemies that are already slept. So there you go. And again, we want a little bit of range on our build because of the fact that we want to get as many enemies as possible in this area. The more enemies you hit, the faster this drains. Alternatively, as well, in order to drain the restraint meter a bit faster, you can also apply Baruuk's Third. As you can see, these darts now protect me and are seeking out enemy weapons. As you can see, there's a little bug right now, which basically makes it so that they start attacking you. They're on pause right now, but as you can see, they're no longer pausing very well when that does that. But as you can see, they no longer have guns, and they aren't able to shoot you. You also have a damage, a damage reduction, which at my build is 90%. So that protects you from that. And as you can see, the limited range that we have basically makes it so that we're not constantly spending our darts too quickly. The reason why I said a little bit of range and not a lot of range, which you could go for, is that as you can see, the darts start going away whenever they attack enemies. So having a lot of range basically makes the darts go out to enemies far away, causing you to expend your darts a lot quicker, which means you're going to be having to cast it a lot more and more and more. So having a little bit of range makes it so that you can take away enemy guns that are close to you, but not basically have to constantly recast this ability over and over and over. Something I probably forgotten to mention, I think I forgot to mention about his third ability, is that these darts also attach to allies, helping benefit them. And anyone standing next to you, while this is active, I believe also gets a 40 to 50% damage reduction. Even with the darts not attached to them. So that basically is helpful. So as you can see, that 145 range allows me to keep this thing active without having to recast it. So now, as you can see, we've completely wiped away Baruuk's restraint meter, allowing us to go into our fourth Searing Storm and use Desert Wind to do massive amounts of damage. Now, something I didn't mention about Searing Storm in our build is a mod called Reactive Storm. Now, Reactive Storm, if you saw it on the build, Clean Eyes will see it, basically makes it so that whenever enemies are hit by Searing Storm, the damage type that they're hit by automatically changes to that enemy's weakness. So as you can see, some of these enemies are getting hit with different types of damage depending on certain factors. So basically, it's automatically hitting them with what they're weak to, as you can see. Now, and because we have Corrupt Charge, as you can see, we're on a ×2 combo multiplier all times, giving us a little bit extra bonus damage. As you can see, we're also building that restraint meter as we're using Baruuk's Fourth. The good news is Baruuk's Fourth allows you to cast his third and his fourth while still being in Searing Storm, allowing you to drain that restraint meter and stay in his fourth ability as much as possible. So that's pretty much how this works. Now, to get the absolute best damage out of Baruuk, in my opinion, and again, keep in mind, I'm not doing the most damage because I haven't Form-It in yet. Just wait till I actually get some Form in there and we might actually be able to do something with maxed out mods and everything. It can be a lot crazier. But the way this works is you want to build combo multiplier. Now there's two ways you can do this. You can use your stat stick to build it up quickly at the cost of maybe having a few bugs and issues with his Searing Storm later while using it. Or you can build combo with Searing Storm. It takes a lot longer, but it's still doable with the build that I have showed you. Now we're going to be using the stat stick as it's a lot quicker for this demonstration. But again, if you want to build combo with Searing Storm, simply get into a group of enemies and do sliding attacks or slam attacks as seen there. Slam attacks and sliding attacks generally help build combo pretty quickly. But for this demonstration, we're going to be using the melee weapon. So we're going to go in here and we're going to lull these enemies to reduce his restraint meter a little bit. and we're going to build up combo. As you can see, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 11, 12, and 13. The reason why we're using the Venka Prime is because it does go to 13 rather than 12. And as you can see, just massive amounts of red crits. Just look at that damage. You can do slam attacks and all that such and such, which is really, really good. Now, we can do heavy attacks, which normally drain we can do a heavy attack which normally drains our combo, but as you can see, I'm still at a times 13 combo multiplier, simply because of that heavy attack efficiency mod we have on there. But also because just the way this works. Again, you may run into some issues with this where you may notice that the red crits go away, even though you're at a 13 times multiplier. It can be a little buggy, and sometimes I find by going out of Searing Storm and attacking an enemy and rebuilding that combo multiplier helps. If that doesn't help, just expend your combo by doing heavy attacks with your melee, and then go back, rebuild it, and then go back into Searing Storm and just start annihilating. And that's pretty much Baruuk in a nutshell. And again, keep in mind, while we're in Searing Storm, while we're using our third ability, and while our restraint meter is drained, we get damage reduction, which is, again, just makes him really, really hard to kill. Now, to make this even better, on top of what we've already discussed, I have applied Pillage to my Baruuk. Honestly, Thorough Strike will also work. And the reason I'm doing that is to make enemies weaker. So, with the build that I have for Baruuk, I go ahead and simulate some enemies. 2 casts of Pillage will strip them completely of armor. As you can see here, their gold bars are now red. And also give me shields. So if I run out of shields, I just cast this one time, and I have shields back, and we're back to being good. And again, alongside that Pillage, now when we do Searing Strike, even without the combo multiplier, as you can see, we are just annihilating those enemies very fast. And yeah, they're dead. Bingus bunker, you're 6 feet under, right? So again, when you combine that with the combo multiplier, so we're gonna go ahead and pop out a Searing Storm here. We're gonna go ahead and do some armor stripping real quick. We're gonna build up our multiplier real quick. Let's go ahead and do that. And strip them again. Now they're weak. We have combo, and enough said. You're hard to kill. You can strip armor on heavy targets. You can get your shields back, and you can just annihilate hallways full of enemies with massive damage and red crits. And again, I haven't even maxed out some of my mods. I haven't even gone as far as like fully formatting Baruuk. And so there you go. This is just one of the many reasons why so many people, and why I personally really love Baruuk. And with Baruuk Prime, it's just one of my personal favorites. Hard to kill, very easy to play, and just kills like no tomorrow. Again, definitely want to pick this Warframe up, in my opinion. But yeah, that's pretty much Baruuk. I'm gonna leave the video here. Hope you guys did enjoy, and I will see you guys all in the next video. Peace.